Hello and welcome everyone. This is the first video of my impression series. My name is Bryan Cooper. I am a sales consultant over at Ken Wilson Ford here in Canton, North Carolina. For this first video, I have decided to choose the 2020 Ford Escape. This is the titanium edition. I just played around with it for a few minutes and I can't wait to show you some of the features. All right, to start off this, I want to start with the exterior, and this is probably the most controversial part of this car. I think it's actually a pretty interesting thing, and that's the fact that this car definitely takes some styling from some of the European counterparts. I'm thinking definitely Porsche Macan. You can kind of see a little bit of that look here in the headlights. Overall on the size of the vehicle as well. I would almost even point out just the way that the tailgate is arched and everything there. This definitely has some European vibes going on. If this had no badges on it, I don't think, if I had never seen this car before, that I would have ever thought it was a Ford. So I think it's actually a pretty good design characteristic on their part. Now this is the titanium edition, so this one's pretty well featured. What's nice is I do think that the Escapes have a lot of stuff standard, more so than some of the other lineup. Which is what I think makes this a really great purchase. Now, kind of coming around, this does have a lot of color options, but I thought this actually looked great here in the silver. It looks good with kind of the two-tone going on. I like the fact that they all have these LED headlights. And you can even kind of see it has this kind of like a quad headlamp setup. You can see the high beams and low beams. It does have LED accent lights. That's what's kind of probably flashing in the video. What's up, guy? Coming around, I think it's actually pretty sleek looking. It almost has a spoiler on the back. It's kind of built into the bodywork. I even like some of the accents where it kind of reminds me of almost like a sports car here, where it's got the cutouts. It's really just there for the reflectors. But if you really think about it, if you're thinking like a sporty car, it almost looks like it would be like an air duct, you know, kind of like venting out, or for aero, something like that. What I thought was shocking is all of these have dual exhaust, which was a little surprising to me. You can see the satellite there, satellite antenna. Yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty good looking vehicle on the exterior. I do think where this vehicle comes alive is when we actually enter the vehicle. All right, let's get inside. Freezing out here. Whew. This wind is getting me. Alrighty, we are now inside the 2020 Escape. And honestly, the first impression that I had of this thing was, despite this being a small SUV, technically a crossover, this thing has a ton of room inside. I am 6'3", and there is nothing about this interior that feels cramped at all. And I'll get more into that here in a minute. But like most of these cars nowadays, this does have a keyless remote start here. I have the key fob here in my pocket. Another initial impressions is I actually do think there's a lot of really good kind of design elements going on here. You can see the wood trim here on the door card. Right here. Now this is only in the fronts, but at least with this black interior, this little accent of the brown wood, and that's actually carried through the dashboard, around the screen, and all the way under the other door. I think it's actually a nice little design touch. I've seen these cars have other color interiors with the leather, and they do look good. They have like a beige, kind of like a tan color, which looks good because it has black accents there as well. Coming around, this was the shock to me as well. This is a massive dual moonroof, and I'll go more into this here in a second. Like I said, this thing has plenty of room inside, and that's before you even open this thing up. Coming back around, I would say the only thing that's kind of maybe a downside of the interior is maybe just the fact that you have this potential blind spot right here. This is where all of the 360 controls are for all the driver safety features, such as the lane keep assist, the adaptive cruise control, some of that stuff. All the cameras or sensors are housed up in there. There's also some speakers and indicators and things that would speak to you if there's like an imminent crash. I like the overall design of the interior. Again, this is the platinum, so it's going to be one of the nicer models, but I think it's great. I think it's even just crazy how much room you have around your seat, if that makes any sense. Like when you just look over at this seat, normally I'm just used to seeing, especially even like a small SUV, everything is kind of like meshed up together. And here you have this massive gap between the seats and the door, which just kind of makes this interior feel even bigger than I was expecting. I'm way more excited about this car than I thought I would have been. I figured it was just a crossover, so it was going to be kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. But it's pretty close to being a master of all trades. Other things that I like about the kind of subtle design characteristics is I just think the overall angular design of certain things just meshes well. I really love these vents. I mean, it almost reminds me of something you might see again in a European, even to the point of potentially even like a Lamborghini or something like that. I think they've really kind of cued into some of that well. Again, just all the asymmetric stuff going on in here I think is really great. So now we're going to go into what I think is probably one of my favorite features. Maybe not favorite features, but biggest maybe oh wow moments was just turning the thing on. So the thing I want to pay attention to is you do have this, I believe it's an 8-inch screen here, which of course is touch enabled. Then you've got this massive, you can't see it because it's off pretty much, but you have this massive digital dashboard, digital cluster. And I mean, this is a 2020, so it should be kind of impressive, and it definitely is. So you can see once we turn it on, there's just some really nice animations going on here. So I know this doesn't translate well on video, but this screen here in the center is just an absolute beauty to look at. It is just such a quality screen. Like the color on it is great. I like the sharpness of everything. There's just a lot going on here. Let me see if I can cut it off again, kind of show you the animation here. It just has a really high quality display. Camera is never really going to pick it up, especially when shooting with a cell phone. But just watching this thing turn on and off and just kind of come to life and animate is just kind of a really impressive you know, thing to look at, if you ask me. Now, what I think is also neat is these have a lot of cool features down here in the center console. So of course you do have this rotary dial here for your transmission selector, including a manual mode. And what I'll point out about that is there are paddles here on the steering wheel. They're actually in a good spot for your hands. I wasn't expecting that. I figured you might have to go to like a full sport model for that, but that's kind of nice to see here in the Platinum. You also have these buttons here, and this is where it almost reminds me of like a, you know, a Land Rover or a Jeep or something that's more of like a dedicated off-road vehicle, and that's the buttons here for all of the driving modes. So these 4 buttons here definitely have a lot going on, so, and they're really easy to access. So this first button here, and I'm gonna be pressing this while watching things on the display, get that off there, is this controls the drive modes, and there are a bunch of drive modes on here. So obviously the vehicle usually defaults into normal mode. As we kind of go through here, the next one is Eco. That does a few things with like the shutter on the front that you know, increases or decreases airflow across the engine bay, which does things for aerodynamics. Obviously it does things with shift points and kind of how the engine runs with its timing and everything. The next one, which is obviously my favorite, is the sport mode. And you can see, again, just the graphics on the screen are just really nice. Now, of course, like any car with a sport mode, especially with a digital screen, you can see that it actually does change the look of the screens, which is, again, one of my favorite things about this. It was just kind of something that was shocking to me. What's funny is when I was really going through some of the training on this and just kind of looking at some of the things, I don't even think it really pointed out the fact that there's so much of a different display on every screen. You can see we're kind of in the wet or the snow mode, and it kind of goes this kind of cold steel look to it. If we move that again into deep snow, that's obviously really soft stuff. This one's probably my favorite textured look. You can almost kind of see that there's just like really, it looks grainy. I mean, it almost looks like it's a low resolution screen, but when you're actually looking at it, everything is extremely sharp, and my camera is just probably not going to do this justice. But the numbers and text are extremely sharp, but they have this kind of grainy sand going on the gauge cluster, and I just think it's a nice little touch. So if we continue to cycle through this, we'll be back in the normal mode. Now what's nice is you can see it has all these other features like auto start stop. That's if you want to have the vehicle shut off after a certain amount of time when you're sitting at red lights, kind of conserves fuel. I love the fact that it's just an easy button. It's just right here on the center console. I've seen other cars that have that feature buried deep into the settings, and you've got to, you know, go through your steering wheel controls or through your center screen to kind of go through and adjust all that. You know, being able to just have it there on a button, I just think is really nice and handy. I mean, with this feature being in a car, it might as well just be easy to access. This is where you're gonna have this other button here right next to the drive modes is going to be your park assist. And I think this is pretty great. These have like a park assist 2.0, which means that it can actually steer and control acceleration and braking and shifting as well. Should be able to shift into reverse, shift into park when everything's done. And what's crazy is it even does, several different types of parking spots. So of course, it can do your regular parallel parking. It can back into perpendicular parking. And what I think is also great for people that can't parallel park is it'll pull out of the spot for you, which is kind of a nice feature to see here. That was kind of cool. It's not a feature that I probably would use too much. I'm old school, but I do like the fact that it has it built in. And again, it's really easy to get to. And this is, of course, a fairly simple one. This is your parking sensors, your reverse sensors, things like that. Again, I just like how they're just so simple. Other stuff here is, of course, you have your electronic brake. Almost called it a hand brake. But, you know, that's how you turn the brake on and off. Now, going into the dashboard, you know, I kind of talked about this array of sensors up here. The fact that it has a bunch of things that it does. One thing that is really cool is, you know, you can easily go into the settings. You can then go into driver assistance. And I thought this was kind of I don't know, I was geeking out about this. So you can see it has all these different things. You've got your adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, pre-collision assist. Obviously, you've got your rear view cameras, blind spot monitoring, cross traffic, which is awesome. That's for like backing up. You know, say, you know, you're in the mall parking lot or something, you can't see behind you. Driver alert, that's for somebody who's, you know, tired, sleepy, maybe kind of driving over the road. It kind of encourages you to take a break. And then of course, your traction control. So what's nice is every single one of these features has like a little demonstration. It's like tiny little Easter eggs built in. So let's just say adaptive cruise control. You want to see kind of how that works. You forget what's what. It has these really nice displays that kind of show you what's going on. Some of them are even animated. So if we go to lane keep assist, you can see it has this, you know, kind of interesting thing. It shows you how it's watching the lines kind of over here on this side. Pre-collision assist. I mean, it's just kind of neat. I mean, not everybody's going to buy these cars and remember exactly what every feature does. I've been spending most of the day doing some research on this thing, and it's even difficult for me. So what's nice is they have this built into the settings here where it's just super easy to access this stuff and, you know, even get an idea of what it is. And then obviously you can just easily change stuff. So if you want to have normal cruise control or adaptive, which I think adaptive cruise control is probably my favorite cruise control ever. And what's nice is most of these even have the stop and go capabilities. So, you know, even if you're in stop and go traffic, it'll slow down all the way to the stop, and then you can have it set to where it does continue, or you can take over, which I think is just really neat. I'm someone that has driven a lot, and I just love that kind of feature. My next car will definitely have that system in it. And just all these other driver aids is just really nice. And the fact that all these driver aids are standard in this car is, I think, one of the key features. I almost think that all cars should have that kind of stuff standard, but it's nice that it's in here. Now, this does have the larger screen, which makes all of this much easier to navigate. But I'm usually pretty harsh on these kind of touch screens and infotainment things. But what I like is this one's just really simple. There's not a whole lot going on. I like it. It does a lot, but it doesn't feel like it does a lot. You've got all your basic controls here. Obviously, all your satellite radio, things like that. All your Bluetooth connectivity. You've got all the Ford Sync stuff. So if you want to, you know, pair up with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you can do that here as well. There's different things you can have all your apps on there. So we'll just get out of that, go back into navigation. So again, just kind of going over the rest of the interior here. I just think it's really clean inside here. There's lots of little, you know, storage pockets and cup holders. I mean, this one's huge. I don't even know what you put in there. You could put like a Nalgene in there. You've got kind of these cell phone pockets that are up underneath it here. The tech nerd in me is super excited about this. And for those that don't know, that is a USB-C charge port which is awesome because most new Android phones now have that, which means you get quick charge out of that, which I think is great. You also have tons of ports. I mean, you've got your regular ports there. You've got another traditional USB underneath of here. You even have this like tricky little pen holder. And then this was a shock to me, but you even have a, what is this, a 120 volt plug underneath here for plugging up any kind of like say a laptop or any kind of accessory that goes with the regular traditional house plug. This model does have the upgraded stereo system, which I can't really do too much of here because of copyright infringement and stuff like that. But just know that it sounds good. There's speakers literally everywhere in this thing, which is one of the main things they tout about it, is they like having all these speakers everywhere, so you get this kind of surround sound thing. Oh yeah, this thing has a heads-up display. So now I'm going to jump into the back seat and kind of show you what I like about back here. Alrighty, we are in the back seat of the 2020 Escape. Now, something I want to again point out, I am 6'3", and I have this driver's seat up here pretty far back. I think when I'm normally driving, I'd probably have the seat a little bit further forward. One thing that's always a big test for me with any kind of four-door car, especially an SUV, is how does somebody like me who's 6'3", fit into the car? And what was really shocking is as soon as I got in this thing, I had plenty of room. I think I love when cars are extremely smart, where they design the front seats to kind of accommodate for legs, if you will. Like you can kind of see as soon as I get in here, I mean, yes, technically I can make my legs rest against the seat, but what's nice is I still have, almost an inch in front of my knee, between my knee and the seat. And honestly, this is really comfortable. I mean, you can see this passenger front seat is a little farther forward. So if anybody who's not tall like me was ever sitting in front of me, yeah, this thing has plenty of room back here. I mean, this is way more room than I've ever had in an airplane in my life before. The seating position back here is really nice. I don't say you sit tall. You definitely have a little bit of a stadium seating effect where you sit a little bit, your butt sits a little bit higher than the front here. But again, it's just tons of room. Again, here I am in the back seat, and again, just to kind of show you how much room there is for somebody tall like me, this has got plenty of space back here. I feel actually really comfortable. And something that was even shocking to me is this. Yes, folks, that is a sliding rear seat, and it also has a recline feature. So both sides of the seats do have the ability to lean back and lean forward. Obviously, that same handle will completely lay the seat flat for storage reasons. But again, there's just tiny little details everywhere in this thing that shocked me when I got in it. Now, I don't know who would really need to have the seat farther forward, except for maybe having luggage stuff if you needed to fit. Maybe you've got kids in the back and you've got more luggage in the back and you want to move things forward. I mean, you can see, like, I'm sitting behind the passenger seat. If I move the seat all the way forward, we just opened up, what is that, 9 inches, 6 to 9 inches of additional storage space. And again, when you've got a smaller crossover like this, any smart way to get more storage is, I think, ingenious. So that was just another kind of shocking thing about this Escape that I really enjoyed. These seats do fold flat and fold flat easily. They've got little buttons here on the headrest that lays that down, and then that same function over here with the handle flattens the seat. So very easy to navigate there. And again, I want to come back to this huge dual moonroof. This I think is just one of my favorite features in any car, and I think this one does it extremely well. So we have our controls up here near the sunglasses holder. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna move the cover back. So it's a one-touch sunroof. So that is at its first setting. You can see just how massive this first main sunroof is. Now if we press it again, this opens up the rest of the way, and you legitimately have an uncovered roof now from all the way from the back seat mean, you can see it lines up right there with the C-pillar, actually just a little bit behind the C-pillar, and goes all the way forward. And again, the headroom and the space you have in this car was immense even before you open this thing. So you open this thing, and not only do you have, there's just so much light, and you have all this extra headroom space, which you don't even need, but it just feels massive in here. And this is like a pretty small car in overall dimensions. It's not huge. It doesn't feel huge when you're driving around. So now we can actually open this thing. And you might be curious how much of the sunroof opens. Well, pretty much the whole thing. Like that is a huge piece of glass that just moved itself back here. And guess what? It even goes a little bit further. Now this piece, from what I understand, does not move, which I think is okay. I can see why they don't move. You can even see it has this nice little screen here to kind of help keep the wind out, and of course any other kind of just, you know, stuff that'd be flying around, i.e. bugs, things like that. And again, it's a one touch to move everything forward. So you can see we've got that here. Now again, one touch, the way I press that now, it's gonna close the sunroof and then the cover. And I mean, how cool is that? maybe I'm more excited than I should be, but I just think stuff like that, when it works well, is just a super clean design feature. All right, now that I've shown you some of the exterior and interior features, I say we get this thing on the road and give it a little bit of a drive. Alrighty. Get the seat where I like it. All right, vehicle is on. Rotate the dial over into drive. Now, initial reactions on just getting in this car and driving it around. I'm kind of in a parking lot right now, and the steering wheel feels really light. Very easy to kind of throw around, especially at slow speeds. It does not feel heavy. It makes the vehicle not feel heavy, which is kind of an interesting thing. Again, just kind of driving around in the parking lot here, just kind of looking around, checking my blind spots. This thing really doesn't have that many. It does have some decent sized pillars, A pillars, B pillars, C pillars. That is obviously for safety reasons. But overall, again, this thing, for as small as it actually is overall, it feels huge inside here. But at the same time, when I'm driving it around, it doesn't feel huge on the exterior. So you get this weird kind of experience when you drive this thing, because your brain can't quite figure out what's going on, because it isn't as big as it feels. Now, these Escapes do have a couple different engine options. This one specifically has my favorite option, which is the larger 2.5 liter EcoBoost engine. This is, of course, turbocharged. This is another thing that was just shocking me when I was looking at the numbers. And I digress. There are 3 engine options, including the hybrid option. But my favorite personally is the EcoBoost. It makes like 250 horsepower and 280 foot-pounds of torque. That's pretty good, especially out of a crossover that's not huge. Now, driving this thing around, it actually drives pretty smoothly. You would never know that this thing has that kind of power. You would never even really know that it's turbocharged. I was really impressed with the braking capabilities. This is not like a sport model or anything like that, but the brakes are instant. Obviously, it does have all the driver tech features as well, but just the overall bite, if you will, and the brakes is nice. There's like no delay in it. The pedal feels great. I actually just had to move my seat up a little bit. This thing is so big inside here that I actually just moved it up just to have a little bit of a better feel. I'm sure I could adjust the steering wheel more if I needed to, but it feels great as it is. Has the tinted rear view mirror that auto adjusts based on how much light it receives, which I think is just another kind of neat feature. A lot of cars have had that, but if you haven't had that kind of a feature, it's just really handy for when you're driving around. Now, power on this thing. Again, we said 250 horsepower. How does that actually feel? Yeah, I would say it. Yeah, I'd say it moves pretty good. You're not gonna win a ton of drag races with it, but man, it definitely feels like it knows what it's doing. Just an overall really impressive package. I you know, this is a huge leap up from the previous Ford Escapes. And there was nothing wrong with the previous Ford Escapes, but this is just such a huge advancement. The styling is massively improved, both in the exterior and the interior. The tech is ridiculous. It's dripping in technology, but not overly complicated where I don't think people would have, you know, an easy time figuring it out. It has all these standard safety features, which, you know, unfortunately we live in a world where people can't put their phones down, but it's just nice to have all that stuff standard. You're not having to pay extra. I mean, sure, you can get some extra phone connectivity stuff with Sync 3 and things like that, but to have all that safety stuff standard, I think is just awesome. The overall dimensions of this crossover, I think, are perfect. You know, there's bigger SUVs, there's smaller crossovers. I think this one actually fits that space in between the two extremely well. I think the interior design is really nice. It's very stylized, but also very classic at the same time. Like, it's not a interior design that's going to get old or feel old after a while. The overall build materials are pretty decent. Everything that you touch is premium. It's got like a leather wrapping here on the steering wheel, the center console. Obviously this has the leather seat option. I'm just really impressed with this car as a whole. Well, that is the conclusion of my first impressions of the 2020 Ford Escape. If you made it all the way to the end, I definitely appreciate your time watching this. There's a lot of stuff I know that I missed. There's a ton of stuff with more technology, with connectivity, with features such as using your foot to open the rear hatch. There's all kinds of little things that I know that I missed. This would be like a 40-minute long video if I went over everything. So again, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you liked, what you'd maybe like to hear more. And of course, if you'd like to come and test drive this vehicle, feel free to stop by Ken Wilson Ford, Canton, North Carolina. Thanks and have a great day.